Welcome to one of the most extraordinary locations in the country.
This is the Science Museum stores, and for one night only, we have exclusive access to Britain's best kept secret.
This place is packed to the rafters with tens of thousands of amazing inventions, and we are taking you behind these doors for a one-off special event.
And we're going to be asking you to decide from this collection, what is Britain's greatest invention?
event, and we want your help. So what kind of things are you looking for, Oliver?
Well, it's really important to preserve a record of this fantastic event. We're looking for objects, maybe that were in the festival science exhibition, and also memories, recollections, photographs even.
There we go. So rummage through your attics and your garden sheds, dust down your old photo albums, and email bgi@bbc.co.uk with all of your memories and objects, and we'll share them later.
Look, it's a great cause, Hannah, so come on, guys, let's try and get some answers. There'll be some stuff in the loft. Now, on to our next invention, and one that is so integral to our lives today. I know I rely on it, and that nomophobia, yes, that's a genuine word, is the fear of being without it. And here to explain more, please welcome TV presenter Angela Scanlon.
My invention can create governments and topple them. It can remake whole industries, conjuring a $60 billion company like cab firm Uber from nothing. And it has changed how our entire species communicates. This is the mobile phone, an invention so successful it outnumbers humans on planet Earth.
Put simply, the mobile phone is the most desired invention of our lifetime, and without it, we'd be completely lost.
I am, of course, talking about the mobile in its latest and greatest incarnation, the smartphone, a miraculous device now deeply embedded in our lives. Us owners swipe and pinch them hundreds of times a day and use them to replace an astonishing range of real devices. Landlines, of course, but also cameras and clocks.
So what were the amazing conflux of technologies, and who were the melting pots of minds that came together to create this mobile miracle?
The modern mobile builds on the principles of three great British inventions. The telephone, invented by Scotsman Alexander Graham Bell, the programmable computer devised by Charles Babbage, and the web, created by Tim Berners-Lee. But the magic final ingredient is far less well known. Designed in 1985 by Cambridge's Acorn Computers, the tiny ARM processor. Its ultra-low power consumption made this chip perfect for portable battery-powered phones. Today, its offspring are in 98% of mobile devices, putting the world at our fingertips.
What other little nugget of joy can possess so much information and make life so easy? Thank you. Bye-bye.
By being pocket-sized, the mobile is the first truly personal computer, with us whenever we need it.
This one little device is thousands of times more powerful than all of the computers used to send man to the moon in the 60s. Get your head around that. But is having the power of this supercomputer in our hands a good thing?
Helping me find out is Dr. Elizabeth Bruton from the Science Museum, an expert on the mobile phone's impact on society.
Because we always have it on us, we take for granted really what the possibilities are. But actually, there's a real power in that device to do good and not just spend time chatting.
Yeah, so we see a teenager walking down the street and we might assume they're Snapchatting their best friend about something quite shallow and utterly inconsequential. But actually, they could be doing all sorts of interesting things on their phone. They could be encouraging people to go out to vote. They could be very much involved in political activism and engaging with the news and what's going on in the world around them. The mobile phone is a tool for good and bad in equal measure. It's how we choose to use it.
Millions use it to try and change the world. It was central to the Arab Spring of 2011, allowing campaigners to organise and publicise demos that brought down governments. And it enabled a reality TV star to talk directly to his fans and become the most powerful man on earth.
How has it changed the way we associate with previously untouchable people in the public eye?
So previously we would have, we might have read interviews with politicians or celebrities in magazines and newspapers, but now there's a much more immediate relationship. We can tweet them, we can follow them on social media. There's much more a sense of accountability, but also maybe a flattened hierarchy.
So it feels like the mobile phone has almost made the world shrink.
For better and for worse, we have a much more intimate, much closer, much more immediate sense of communication with our friends and our loved ones. Sometimes it can feel inescapable. I'm sure you know about Irish mammies.
That I do.
For all the mobile's world-changing power, this thing is the best-selling gadget of all time because it makes our everyday lives easier. Performing tasks that just a few years ago would have sounded like science fiction.
One of the most mind-blowing things about this piece of technology is that it's making us all multilingual, or at least that's the idea. Okay, so apparently this place serves crabs, white clams near the clams specifically.
Thanks to the mobile, I can choose with confidence from any menu in the world. But could the mobile also satisfy a deeper hunger? Neuroscientists
through nearly 15,000 simulated flights to make sure it was secure and reliable.
Within the rigorous testing period, these British-made engines are pushed to their limits in specially designed locations. Tests include firing up the engine in -40 degrees, putting all 38,000 parts through severe crosswinds, and spraying 30,000 gallons of water straight into the engine. All to make sure this method of travel remains the safest on Earth. The vast power of the jet engine has driven everything from land speed cars to military aircraft. But the world truly changed when multiple engines were combined in one aircraft to allow us all to take flight.
Us Brits are an inventive bunch. Not only did we create the jet engine, we also created the jetliner.
The jetliner brought together multiple jet engines into one craft, able to take large numbers of passengers at dizzying heights and speeds. The power of the jet engine was now open to us all.
Anstead.
David, hello there.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
You too.
Oh, well, Anstead, tell me a little bit about the first experience, what it would have been like flying on the first jet airliner.
It would have been completely different from what anybody had ever encountered before. Let's look at what people were used to in terms of civil aviation at that time. Everything was basically resulting from a World War II bomber or a transport aircraft or something like that. When the Comet came along, it was completely different. Jet engines, it could fly higher than anything else, it could fly faster, it was smooth, it was quiet, there was no vibration, it was just absolute luxury. People had never seen the like of it before. It was completely revolutionary.
As well as transforming the way we travelled, it also increased our appetite for foreign climes.
Everybody wanted to fly jets. It wasn't long before it became accessible with the rise of the package holiday industry in the 1960s. People were flying on their holidays on jet aircraft. Today, it's something like 3.8 billion passenger journeys are made every year.
And of course, it's not just people that's transported by the jet, right?
No, not just people at all. No, 35% of the world's trade by value is flown on a jet aircraft. That's about $6.4 trillion worth of cargo, but that's a phenomenal figure for world trade, all carried by jet aircraft.
Wow.
Since its birth, the jet engine has propelled many more British innovations. The spectacular Airbus, the supersonic Concorde. Britain has ruled the skies for decades. Today, the jet flies 37 billion kilometers a year, the equivalent of 120 trips to Mars.
It has transformed our taste buds, opened our eyes to countless cultures, and made explorers of millions of us. It has quite literally brought humankind closer together.
It makes you think, though, what did we do before the jet engine?
You've got to imagine, when my father came to England from Barbados, it took him 6 weeks to travel. We can do that journey now in hours, 6, 7 hours from Barbados.
And what's the future, do you think?
Well, who knows? Perhaps the future of jet propulsion would be personal jet travel, maybe jet cars.
Right,
or even...
it's funny you say that, because earlier this evening we spent some time outside with what I can only describe as Jetman. It's a rocket-propelled... Would you be Jetman?
I would fly home in that tonight.
Really?
If he could take it off,
you'd have that?
I would
here he is
this.
now. So this guy was outside this evening, David and I mean, look at that, it's crazy.
It's awesome.
Would you do that?
I would do it, I'd go home in it tonight. Can you imagine the commute to work, flying in one of those? It would just be awesome.
The noise was staggering and it was fantastic to see. And it's exciting, isn't it, where this is heading?
Well, you know, this is what's great is that we're still innovating. This is the jet engine is a British design, and this is a British young man who has taken that to another level. So we're still innovating, we're still leading the pack in this design.
Yeah, it's exciting. The jet engine, if it is your favourite, then the number is on the screen now. But remember, voting won't open till the last invention is shown. So don't call yet, as your vote won't count. Now, from jets to propellers, Hannah.
Everywhere you look in here, you will find another first. Now, this plane here that's just behind the main stage is the Lockheed Constellation, the very first pressurised air carrier. And this one also just happens to have been the Rolling Stones tour plane in the 1970s. I think you can imagine the kind of stories that happened in there. This gondola here was attached to an enormous balloon, and this became the first manned object to reach 50,000 feet in 1932. And in an earlier attempt at the world record, the two scientists that were squished inside that pressurised balloon noticed a leak on the way up and had to plug it with Vaseline and bits of cotton. They don't make scientists like that anymore.
Right, next up is someone who believes that to be a truly great invention, you've got to stay cool. Please welcome journalist Giles Corran.
There's one invention none of us could live without, and almost all of you have one in your home. It's the unsung hero of the modern world, and globally we buy 100 million a year. As a restaurant critic, I tend to think that the key to comfort, happiness and pleasure lies in our food and drink, in the little things we take for granted, like a splash of fresh milk in our morning tea, or delicious fruit all year round, to an ice-cold lager at the end of a hard day. And for all these things, we have one extraordinary invention to thank, a big, ugly lump of technology that lurks in the corner of pretty much every house, bar, restaurant and pub in the country. Without it, yes, we'd have no bananas, no flowers on Mother's Day. It is the fridge. In my 1970s suburban childhood home, the fridge was basically king of the house. Everything went in there, not just meat, fish and dairy, but bread, potatoes. I think my mum even kept her fags in there. You open your fridge around 20 times a day, and it's impacted your life immeasurably. But where did it come from? It wasn't until very recently that I learned that the history of the fridge begins with a printing press, and very possibly the only truly useful thing a journalist has ever done. The hack in question was a Glaswegian called James Harrison, and one evening, about 150 years ago, he was watching the press being cleaned with sulfuric ether, and he noticed an extraordinary thing, which was when the ether evaporated, the metal became freezing cold. And he realised in that moment that if he could replicate the process time after time, he'd have a machine that could keep anything cold. With the discovery that evaporation cools by absorbing energy and extracting heat, Harrison patented an airtight system which replicated this, and the fridge was born. Following huge industrial uptake, the manufacturing of domestic fridges was in full swing by the 1930s. 3 decades on, and the fridge's continued popularity had a surprising impact. The 1960s were a time of radical change, thanks in no small part to the fridge. By the end of the decade, the majority of British households had one, and this fridge revolution brought with it an unexpected result: the liberation of women. I'm meeting a world-leading authority on feminist history, Oxford University's Dr. Ruth Percy, to discover more. So can you give me a picture of what a woman's life was like before the advent of the refrigerator then?
So for many women, you would have been shopping daily. So that's a lot of time. Then coming home, preparing food, cooking the food, and having to do that every single day because you can't store leftovers safely for long periods of time before you get the fridge.
The fridge was marketed as a revolutionary time-saving appliance and miraculous preserver of food, but no one could have foreseen its unexpected social effect. The fridge does not strike me as a very likely image of liberation. How does it work?
It's through the way in which they reconfigure women's time that they allow women to do other things with their time, including going out to work. Of course, women are making parts for fridges as well.
Were women involved in the production of fridges?
Yeah, they're involved in the production of hoovers, fridges, the other sorts of new technologies that come into the home.
Well, she looks over the moon about it.
She looks absolutely thrilled about her stacked fridge. I think I would be thrilled if my fridge looked like that, actually.
From that moment on, women's employment rose 5% every decade, thanks, in part, to this humble invention. As well as this unexpectedly liberating side effect, the power of refrigeration has had a profound impact on the way we eat. Its capacity to preserve means it's a crucial cog in the global food industry. and it keeps this supermarket distribution centre alive. This 8.5-acre fridge in Peterborough transports 2 million cases of food to 200 stores every week. I'm wondering if the fridge has even transformed us as a species.
So Sarah, I'd really like to make a case in my championing of refrigeration and fridges to say that the fresh food that it's given us actually enabled us to fulfil our potential as humans. Is that possible?
Yes, it is, because nutrition has changed dramatically. The fridge is a big part of that story. By about 1900, Britain is getting half her food from overseas, of which a large proportion of that is meat and dairy produce. And it's been particularly that increase in meat and dairy that probably has affected stature. But we were a lot shorter than today.
How short in 1900?
168 centimetres on average.
So if I went back to 1900, the height I am now, I would have been 10 centimetres taller than average.
Yes, yes.
What about other things? What about mentally?
People have certainly argued that, of course, better nutrition gives you better cognitive ability, you can learn more. This is true for children in schools. I mean, you know...
So kids are getting smarter, thanks to fridges?
Well, hopefully.
So there you have it. The fridge gave us better nutrition, and in return we're taller, stronger, smarter.
But the magic of the fridge doesn't end there. It's essential for the safe transportation of life-saving vaccines around the world. It makes sperm banks possible, extending human fertility. In the world's biggest fridge, the Large Hadron Collider, they're using it to uncover the secrets of the origins of the universe. And by keeping vast seed banks in freezers, we may just be safeguarding the future food supply of the human race itself. That's some invention.
I mean, straight away, I think it's one of those inventions that kind of goes under the radar.
It goes under the radar. It doesn't fly. It doesn't have a whistle that Len can pull and get all excited. You can't take a selfie on it. You can't watch Celebrity Love Island on it. But it's in every home. Who here doesn't have a fridge? Everybody has a fridge, you see. And it's changed our lives in ways that these other inventions, which are taking us to hell in a handcart, could not imagine. Before the invention of the fridge, the poor, people like you and me, which, you know, we lived on rubbish. We lived on rotten food, compromised food. In the winter, it was dried food, tinned food. It was only the rich who could have fresh fruit and vegetables, fresh meat and dairy. And so the fridge democratised us. It made it possible for people like you and me, just the little scrots at the bottom of the food chain, to grow up big and strong and healthy. It's changed everything.
Well, that is a pretty compelling argument for the fridge. And if you agree with Giles and the fridge is your favourite, you can vote online, or the number is on the screen now. But remember, voting won't open till later in the show, so don't call, as your vote won't count and you may still be charged. Now, from something cold to the Cold War. Hannah?
Now, for every nice, slightly crazy invention that they have here in the collection, they also have other, much more sinister objects, like this guy here. It's called blue steel, and this is effectively a nuclear bomb. Up until 1970, this nuclear missile is how Britain would deliver its nuclear payloads, until it was replaced by this guy here, which some of you may recognise as a big image of the Cold War. This here is the Polaris missile. The nukes would go in the nose just there. These various sections would break off as it entered into space. But conflict is a big driver of innovation, because if it wasn't for the navigation system that was designed for this missile, you wouldn't have GPS today.
Now, without our next invention, millions of people wouldn't be alive today, and that includes our celebrity backer. Please welcome broadcaster Angela Rippon.
This invention is a magic bullet. It's made childbirth 35 times safer. It saved 200 million lives. Without it, you would probably be dead. It's antibiotics. I'm advocating antibiotics because of the immense impact they've had on all of us. You, me. In my case, for instance, I developed tuberculosis when I was 6. Now, without antibiotics, I probably wouldn't be here now. Antibiotics are quite simply bacteria killers. munching up the microbes that cause deadly infectious diseases like cholera, typhoid, and TB. Now, you may think this wonder drug more discovery than invention, but let me convince you otherwise. The story begins in 1928 when scientist Alexander Fleming forgot to clean up a Petri dish full of bacteria. A week later, he noticed some mold had grown up, killing the bacteria. Fleming had accidentally discovered penicillin, but he had little clue what to do with his freak find or how to reproduce it. The real piece of inventive genius took place 10 years later, here in Oxford. Behind this door is the original lab of the pioneering Oxford scientist Howard Florey, and it was in here that a team of brilliant minds turned Fleming's rather unexpected discovery into a miracle cure. This is the room where antibiotics were truly invented at the dawn of the Second World War. The team invented a way to purify the mold juice by combining it with ether and alkalines that drew away the harmful elements, creating an antibiotic pure enough for humans to take. Scientist and historian Dr. Eric Sidebottom was a pupil of the men involved. Clearly, if it was going to do any good at all to the masses, it had to be mass-produced. So were they able to develop penicillin here in Great Britain?
Yes, to some extent they were, but Florey was always worried that he couldn't really persuade the British pharmaceutical industry to get involved. They were already committed to the war effort. So Florey made this difficult decision to take the problem to America, and the Americans did help. They increased production very considerably. They found a better strain of penicillium on a local melon in the market. They also managed to get it growing in a huge suspension tank, in a big tank, whereas in Oxford we'd grown it in bedpans.
Penicillin soon arrived on the battlefront, and in 1943 proved itself as a wonder drug, saving soldiers from the worst of war wounds, as well as treating other ailments.
It's also, there's a funny offshoot of that story. Some army doctor discovered that penicillin was also extremely good, effective at treating the clap, gonorrhea. That then posed a moral dilemma because they didn't have enough penicillin to treat everyone. Do you treat the badly injured, honourable soldiers or the rather naughty boys who've got self-inflicted clap? The rumour is that the decision went all the way up to Churchill. And Churchill said that this most valuable new substance must be used to the best war interest, which actually meant treating the guys with clap because they could be back on the front line within days.
Since the discovery of penicillin, more than 100 new antibiotics have been created, each capable of fighting a whole host of bacterial infections. In Britain, 34 million are prescribed each year. But there's a problem. The trouble is, the more antibiotics we take, the more the bacteria are becoming resistant to them. It's why we're being told that we could be on the verge of a superbug pandemic, and there would be nothing that our wonder drug can do to stop it. Antibiotics are under threat, but salvation may again lie with a team of British scientists who are working to invent a brand new antibiotic using South American ants. These ants live in underground nests. For food, they grow a fungus garden made from rotting leaves and flowers. To keep their food clean, they use an antibiotic to kill any germs.
Sometimes you get a contaminant, and of course the ants need to get rid of that, or else it'll just start destroying their food source.
So, what is it that you've discovered about what they're doing that's so exciting?
What's been found is that the worker ants actually have a bacteria that they grow on their backs. And this bacteria has very, very powerful antimicrobial properties. So when the ants discover there's a contaminant in their fungus garden, they can actually smear some of this bacteria onto the unwanted bacteria and kill it off. So by isolating that bacteria that's on their backs, this has potential for controlling all sorts of problems that we now face.
For instance?
The bacteria can control MRSA.
So are we looking here at something that could give us the first new antibiotic in, what, the best part of 40 years?
Quite possibly. And it also opens up a lot of new avenues for research.
Antibiotics are one of the greatest medical advancements in human history. They've saved bacteria-ravaged populations and enabled our world-leading NHS to perform life-saving miracles. This wonder drug may be under threat, but thanks to groundbreaking research, this British invention will hopefully continue to save lives for generations to come.
That's powerful stuff. It makes you wonder, though, what did we do before antibiotics?
I think everybody forgets that before we had penicillin, yes, all the diseases and illnesses could kill you, but so could pricking your finger on a rose thorn, having a small paper cut, anything that enabled the skin to open so that bacteria could get inside, meant that you could get sepsis, blood poisoning, which would kill you because your body had no defense against it. As we heard in the film there, women were still suffering, they were dying in childbirth in the 1940s. Then along comes penicillin, does those wonderful things on the battlefields of Europe, and suddenly we have this wonder drug, which, you know, it's very easy for me to say I think this is the greatest invention, simply because, yes, it's lovely to travel the world in jet engines, it's lovely to watch the telly and have mobile telephones and keep your food clean and healthy in the fridge, but you can't enjoy any of those things if you're dead. And antibiotics have been keeping the world alive and will go on keeping us alive, which means we can go on enjoying not just these inventions, but also the inventions that are yet to come from the generations that will live in the future. Antibiotics is the saviour of the human race. It's the greatest.
Well, you can't really argue with that. I mean, where do we go? But if antibiotics is your greatest invention, then all the information you need is on the screen now. And voting will open once the inventions have been showcased, so don't call, because your vote won't count. So we're on to our last invention, and probably one that you haven't even thought about, even though it's all around us. Please welcome TV presenter Nick Knowles.
My invention is an unsung hero. Ubiquitous but overlooked. Unloved but steadfast in its service to us all.
Many would argue that man's best friend is the dog. I would argue that humanity's best friend is all around us. It's strong, it's dependable, and always there to support us. Welcome to the wonderful world of concrete.
Concrete is the building block of our civilization. This stuff builds our schools and our hospitals and all of our major infrastructure. Tunnels and railways, bridges and flood defences, docks and airports, power stations and even sewers. Some 70% of the world live in concrete homes, and most of the rest of us have concrete foundations. The result is the most used man-made material on Earth.
So, where did it all start? Some of you might think it's the Romans. And you're right, kinda, but that's only half the story.
Because concrete as we know it, the stuff that built our world, is a British invention. To unravel the hows and the whys, I'm meeting a leading expert on the grey stuff. Civil engineer Dr. Wendell Sebastian.
I recognise this stuff. I've used bags and bags of it in my time building, and it's made all over the world. So what makes concrete British?
The fact that a key component of concrete is this material that we see here, Portland cement. Concrete is a composite material. It is made by combining cement, which is a key ingredient, with water, sand, and gravel. When you mix those four materials together, the water engages with the cement as a binder around the sand and the gravel. And that is essentially what gives concrete its structural integrity.
So it's cement that's the magic ingredient in concrete that binds it together, and cement is at the centre of the British story.
Yes, it is, very much so.
This all-important concrete glue, Portland cement, is what makes modern concrete a British invention. Before the Brits got involved, the Romans had used a form of ancient concrete, gravel bound together with volcanic ash. Useful, but only if you've got a volcano next door. Fast forward to the 19th century, Leeds, home to a builder named Joseph Aspdin, who wanted to mass produce concrete. But for that, he would need a new concrete glue.
Well, the Romans had volcanic ash. We don't have volcanoes, but we do have clay and we do have limestone. And what Mr. Joseph Aspdin did in 1824 was to develop a process in which the limestone, which you see here, was ground into a very fine powder and mixed with clay, which was also very finely ground, and he heated them up to a very high temperature. The end result of all of that is cement.
Aspdin quickly patented his miracle binding agent, calling it Portland cement, because it looked like fashionable Portland stone. This was the moment when concrete as we know it was born. Almost immediately, concrete use took off, enabling construction on a previously unimaginable scale. From building the London Underground to lining the Panama Canal, today, concrete is still made with Portland cement and is used more than ever. So here comes your concrete delivery.
Yeah, the concrete's just turning up now, so that'll be doing 2 of the male secant piles.
To show what makes concrete so special, I've come to West London. This building site is part of an extraordinary £4.2 billion project, the construction of a super sewer beneath the capital. Running this site is John Corcoran. How big is this tunnel when you stand in it?
It's huge, 3 double-deckers, it's 7.2 metres diameter, wow. It's 40 kilometres long.
Very difficult to imagine using any other kind of material for that. And this is all to keep sewage, raw sewage, out of the Thames?
Yes.
Every year, overflow sewers dump up to 40 million tonnes of untreated sewage into the Thames. This super sewer will intercept these overflows and send them for treatment in East London. All built with 1.8 million tonnes of concrete, moulded, sprayed and poured into every shape imaginable.
It's the fact it's so fluid that makes it such a miracle material, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It's so adaptable as well. I mean, 1 minute it's a liquid, and then it's a structurally strong building block.
But it will take the shape of whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
This one project is a massive example of how important concrete is in modern civilization. I mean, it's part of the tunnels. It's part of the shafts. It's part of the support for the gas and the electric. It's going to be diverting sewage away from our rivers. It's making a healthier environment where we can all live happily and longer, by the way. Without this material, we wouldn't have the society in which we live. It just wouldn't exist.
It was Britain that made modern concrete, and concrete that has made modern Britain. It's transformed our cities and was the building block of the welfare state, used in just about every hospital and school built since 1945. It is the basic material for all of our major infrastructure, power stations, roads, railways, airports, the lot. This grey liquid magic has also improved life for billions around the globe. Concrete for many means wells, latrines and safe, clean housing.
So we know concrete has made a massive difference to the world, but it could also make a world of difference to just one person. Some years ago, I was in Nairobi building a shack for a chap called Enwigo, who'd lived his whole 70 years of his life on dirt floors in the slums. All he'd ever wanted was a concrete floor, so me and a couple of colleagues mixed up concrete by hand and laid one for him. When he saw it, you'd think we'd have given him Buckingham Palace. Why? Because he knew he'd be free from disease, he'd be healthy, and he'd be safe. That's what concrete can do for people.
Well, if you want to vote for concrete, the number is on the screen. But don't vote just yet. Voting will open shortly. Now, Nick, I heard a few people here say that concrete's a bit boring.
Yeah, well, look, on the face of it, it is. And, you know, the romantic choice is going to be steam or the jet engine. The young people are going to go for the foam. But let's be really real here. It may be boring, but it's critical. It's critical because it's great to have a jet plane, but where are you going to land it if not on a concrete runway? You're not going to take off even. Steam trains are lovely, but tunnels, bridges, you can only make with concrete. You can't make them any other way. Angela gave a great performance on antibiotics, but the truth of the matter is, because we take our sewers underground, we take all the disease away. Look at it before we actually had the sewers in London. Disease everywhere, people dying right, left and centre. All our sewage would be running down the middle of the streets, we'd all be dying early. You could take any of these inventions, even the electric inventions. Where is the cleanest source of power? From hydroelectric dams. How do you make hydroelectric dams? With concrete. It basically sells itself. Take all the materials used in the world by humankind and put them in one pile, and then the concrete pile will dwarf it massively.
Well, I think Nick's got a pretty good point about concrete. Now, you've heard all 7 inventions. It's over to you, Hannah.
Well, voting is now open for approximately 30 minutes. Calls cost 15p plus any network access charge. Please ask the bill payer's permission for full terms, and to vote online, visit bbc.co.uk/invention. And please don't vote if you are watching on demand.
I hope this doesn't complicate for life my watching television. I think it's one of the most powerful ways in which television has been a force for good.
You don't have to be a genius to know that my invention is the steam engine. It's got like a rhythm to it. You know, I feel a foxtrot coming on any minute.
What other little nugget of joy can possess so much information and make life so easy? This tiny device is changing us faster than anything in human history.
I want to tell you about the greatest British invention of all. The jet has radically changed my life. Without it, my world would be completely different.
We have one extraordinary invention to thank that lurks in the corner of every house in the country.
It's essential for the safe transportation of life-saving vaccines around the world. It makes sperm banks possible, extending human fertility. That's some invention.
This invention is a piece of incredible medical magic. I'm advocating antibiotics because of the immense impact they've had on all of us. You, me.
This one project is a massive example of how important concrete is in modern civilization. Without this material, we wouldn't have the society in which we live. It just wouldn't exist.
We want your votes to decide what is Britain's greatest invention.
And here's all the details you need to vote for your favourite.
For the television, call 09015 22 82 01.
For the steam engine, call 09015 22 82 02.
For the mobile phone, add 03.
For the jet engine, 04.
If the fridge is your choice, add 05.
For antibiotics, 06.
And for concrete, add 07.
Now remember, calls will cost 15p plus any network access charge.
But you can also sign in and register to vote online for free at bbc.co.uk/invention. Earlier in the programme, we asked you to come forward with your memories, your photographs and your objects from the Festival of Britain, a nationwide event that celebrated British innovation 66 years ago. And so far, we have had a pretty fantastic response. So Roger Marlott from London has sent in this photo of his late mum standing in front of the Skylon. This was probably the most iconic image of the festival, and a very clever piece of engineering which was held up without any visible means of support. We also have this wonderful piece of footage from Dave Ismay in Scotland, which shows the miniature railway which took 3.5 million people around the festival. And it turns out the man who created this railway, Roland Emmett, went on to design a car that I know I loved from my childhood, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. We also have Clive Hustlebury, who sent in this photo of his dad, Gil, operating a Marconi camera at the festival. And here on stage, I am joined by expert and enthusiast of the festival, Tim Dunn. Welcome, Tim.
Hello.
Now, tell me what you've brought with you.
What we've got here, well, this here is a badge made to give to every single visitor at the Festival of Britain site on the South Bank. Almost 8.5 million of these were actually made for that.
So there should definitely be a few of those kicking about.
I think there should be these in some drawers and some attics around. And perhaps I think a shoot go to the Science Museum as well later on.
What's this thing here?
This is a wonderful lithograph of the inside of Dome of Discovery, which was adjacent to the skyline.
A microscope in the
Yeah,
top?
yeah. So this was there to showcase all of the great wonders that British inventors and scientists and engineers had created just for the rest of Britain.
Fabulous. And a colour picture here as well. Is that the map of the site?
And that's the map of the festival gardens up at Battersea, which was a more whimsical sort of site. Rather than it being technology and invention, it's creativity, fun and roller coasters and little railways, a brilliant place for all.
Now, I reckon there's a lot of people who will have visited that and remember it. But I heard a rumour that Walt Disney also went to the festival.
That's what the tale says, yes. There's a claim that that happened. But certainly, it seems that a little bit later on, Disneyland looks rather similar in certain ways to this, doesn't it?
It does, indeed. I think that means that we can claim credit for Disneyland. I'm
that
pretty sure
one.
that's how it works. OK, tell me about this one.
And this, I think, demonstrates just the vastness of the Abrams Games logo. Now, this is this is the festival star that you saw on almost every single bit of memorabilia. I mean, it was absolutely everywhere in 51, and everyone got in on the act. So everything from sherry decanters and little shot glasses and sherry glasses, through to things like door knockers.
Wonderful stuff, wonderful stuff. Well, thank you very much, Tim. Now, a reminder of who to vote for. We want your votes to decide what is Britain's greatest invention.
And here's all the details you need to vote for your favourite.
For the television, call 09015 22 82 01.
For the steam engine, call 09015 22 82 02.
For the mobile phone, add 03.
For the jet engine, 04.
If the fridge is your choice, add 05.
For antibiotics, 06.
And for concrete, add 07.
Now remember, calls will cost 15 pence plus any network access charge.
But you can also sign in and register to vote online for free at bbc.co.uk/invention. Now, this incredible time capsule, I can't get these gloves on, is fuelled by donations. And amongst all of the objects here, there is something that caught my eye. You know what? That's just going to have to do. Because it is this incredible prosthetic arm. Look at this. Now, this arm, we know that it was made from a pianist, and you can see that because if you look at the fingers, they are designed so they can span an octave. And also, the little finger pads there are padded, so they didn't make a sound when they hit the keys. Now, when this object was donated, it came with a note which said that the pianist played in the Royal Albert Hall in 1906, but we don't know anything else about its owner or how it was used. So the question is, do you know about the story behind this object? Because the Science Museum are desperate to find out who it belonged to. So if you know whose hand this is, then please do get in touch. Get rid of those now. But to bring a unique perspective on this and the future of British innovation, I am joined by Nikki, a lady with a British-invented bionic arm. Hello, Nikki. It's lovely to meet you.
Hello, Hannah. Nice to meet you.
Oh, my gosh, it's quite a strong handshake.
Yes, it's quite strong.
Can you move it yourself? How are you moving it?
So this is operated by two sensors which are in the socket just here. So we've got one on the right-hand side which does open, and then one on the left which does close. And I'm just pressing those with the muscles in my arm.
Fabulous. Is it easy to take off?
Really easy.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, super easy. And that's handy because I was charging it just earlier today.
You have to charge it on at night time. Do you have to charge it at night time?
Yes, mobile phone and prosthetic hand next to each other being charged.
That's a lovely idea. So what does this allow you to do then that you weren't able to do before?
It's actually really simple things in my day-to-day life, like if I'm peeling a banana, for example, I can hold the banana in my hand and peel it with my left hand, and it means I don't have to clutch it to my body like I would have done before, which ends up in a bit of a banana mess.
I can imagine. But you were the first person in Britain to get this, and it is a British invention.
Yes, it was made in Leeds, and I was very fortunate to be the first person to have one. It was a chance encounter. I was approached in the street by somebody who was the inventor of it, and I ended up with it.
Amazing. Well, as we've already said, donations are the lifeblood of this place, and people are driven to donate all manner of objects, including this wonderful prosthetic here. And that means, given the donations that are given here, I think I know where Ant is.
Well, to be fair, I can't help but be drawn to this huge wall of bikes and this stunning line of cars, because I'm a petrol head. This is my corner. And this was the world's first driverless car in 1960, although that only applied on the M4, because buried beneath 9 miles of tarmac was a copper cable to guide it up to 80 miles an hour like a real-life Scalextric. And the rumour has it that that cable's still there. And then there is this beautiful machine here. This is actually an electric vehicle from 1897. 70 of those existed on the roads in London, and they acted as taxis, and they were known as the Hummingbird. Plus, they had charging points all over London. Now, as with a lot of the items in here, these were also gifted to the museum. And tonight, we're able to see a very special gift revealed to the public for the very first time. Tell us, what have you got in this box?
So this is actually material that has been to Everest and back. So this is the first time they'll be on public show. So they don't look like much, but these are actually really important to the vital effort of going up and down. So these were actually used in experiments of expired air. So climbers could know how the altitude was affecting their bodies. So this all belonged to someone called Griffith Pugh, who donated the material to us today.
So this stuff here has actually been at the summit of Everest?
It has, and back again.
And how's that affected future climbs of Everest?
So what happened was the work that Griffith Pugh did, he did it in the field with the climbers, so they all trusted his data and his experience, so it meant that they could conquer more and more peaks over time.
Wow, and I've got to go straight to the shoes, and the reason is these really, really smell. I can smell them from here.
Yeah, and what it is, it's the rubber in them, so you can kind of smell the rubber off-gassing, but they're actually a lot lighter than the previous shoes that were worn, that were made of leather and reindeer skin, and of course they've been to Everest and back, so of course they're going to smell.
A bit of climbing sweat.
Yes.
So where have these things been then?
So we were really fortunate to have the family contact us and ask us whether or not we'd like to take these into collection, and we said yes straight away. I mean, it's a fantastic story for us to be able to tell.
And is it important that people do donate this kind of stuff?
Yeah, because Griffith Pugh is a kind of unknown story in the mountaineering team of the conquering of Everest. And without these objects, we could never tell that story now or for future generations.
Well, I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. And see, this stuff here is amazing. Thank you very much. Right, well, we're going to keep talking about these trousers, actually, because you think about how cold does Everest get?
I mean, it's absolutely freezing, you know, it's more than the human body can really tolerate. And these are actually padded with nylon and they're waterproof. And I also love the zip that you can see just down there for obvious reasons. But it's absolutely cold. So Griffith Pugh was really interested in how the cold climate affected the body. And he went on many expeditions afterwards to look at Antarctica as well. Now,
I've been in really cold environments. In fact, last year I went to -40 in Mongolia, so I know what modern day clothing looks like. And it's actually not dissimilar.
It's not, and they actually look like duvets, just stitched together and makeshift, and that's probably what they started off as.
So what sort of experience would it have been for the guys back in the day using this equipment?
It would have been a really challenging experience, but one filled with adventure and kind of that drive to be the first people to conquer Everest. It's amazing.
And how does it feel for you, a Brit, that we did it in Britain?
I mean, it's amazing to be in the presence of these objects and to know that I am part of a massive team here that helps look after them and tell that story is a privilege that I could never have imagined.
And how does the museum rely on these sort of donations?
So when we get contacted by a member of the public, we consider them all and we think about the stories that they can tell. But sometimes we actively go out and ask for things that we think are going to be important in the future as well.
Well, brilliant. It's been absolutely fantastic and a real privilege to see this stuff here. But that's it. Over to you, Anna.
Well, in about 5 seconds' time, the voting lines are now closed. So please do not call anymore because your vote won't be counted and you may still be charged. But here is a reminder of the 7 inventions in the running.
Absolutely fantastic evening, guys. And Trevor, I'm going to go straight to you because without your invention, none of this would have happened.
That's exactly the point. But I think it has a broader significance. It has brought us as a world closer together. We do live in the globalized vision, in the globalized world now, and that's because of television.
And Angela, do you think it's really important that we celebrate British invention?
Oh, it's absolutely essential because I think that throughout history here in Britain we have produced some of the greatest scientists, some of the greatest minds, some of the greatest inventions. But we're also a very self-deprecating nation and we don't always necessarily get out there and say, look how great we are and what we did. So I think all inventions...
You did well tonight.
You did well. So it's a really underhand cards play this evening. She's putting out the Mandela vote. She's claiming everyone's going to die if they don't. And he's pulled out the women's rights vote in the middle of his...
Very literally.
We're a brilliant
unbelievable.
nation of inventors and we should celebrate that.
Well, while you're sparring off against each other, OK, would any of you change your inventions?
I would.
No.
I wanted the corkscrew. Didn't let me have it.
OK. So the corkscrew gets the vote. So, but no, genuinely, would any of you change your invention?
No, I mean,
I love
I'm
David's
really
feeling
glad
about the jets.
I'm really, really glad I got the jet because actually I do think out of all of us, it's the only one that Britain is still at the cutting edge, still leading the world,
still in
innovating.
You can't campaign while they're still voting.
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying to land the thing.
Yeah, the vote is over, guys.
It's also very sexy. It's very sexy.
May I just say,
on an aeroplane. What's the point of doing that?
Fantastic inventions.
I know.
Can I say, it was one of the most competitive green rooms I've ever been in. Everybody undermining everybody else's room. It was ridiculous.
Angela was being booed when you said the mean stuff about the jet engine. They were throwing boxes.
It was quite mean.
We can travel the world in it, which we do, of course.
If you were
And
dead.
also a compelling argument. None of these matter if you're dead.
I know. I
Try to argue with that.
Well, I tell you what's really
low
interesting
blow.
is that during the VTs, I asked each and every one of you, who do you think will win? And actually, none of you went, because it is a split vote.
Very close. Very tough. Very tough. Obviously, concrete would win if. I'm going to pull the trump card. If concrete doesn't win, it's obviously rigged. That's what I'm saying.
I shall appeal.
I'm going to say that if I come second, I'm actually the winner.
That's popular at the moment, isn't it? Yeah.
And I think it's really clear that you guys have taken this really seriously. You've really backed your inventions.
You can tell that.
And what do you think of this facility? Come on.
Fantastic. This deserves a round of applause.
I'm going to have to interrupt there because I'm told now that Hannah, this is the moment we're all waiting for.
Come on, folks.
This is the vote.
Here's the result in this concrete facility.
OK, here we go. Well, the results are in. And the winner of Britain's greatest invention is... antibiotic.
What's all that
Right, OK, Angela, before I go to you, Nick, what swung it for antibiotics?
The being dead and not being able to enjoy anything. That's straight. Some of the most underhand pitching I have ever seen on a television programme.
Angela, victorious.
I'm sorry. Bad losers. The fact is that, seriously, antibiotics are keeping the world alive. Since they were really tested out on the battlefields of the Second World War in 1943, 200 million people's lives have been saved. Just think what that means. Without that, there'd be no Australia, there'd be no Norway, no France, no Great Britain.
Against yourself.
Whole bits of... seriously, it's absolutely revolutionised the health of the world and the things that we are able to do as a result of that. Look at the amazing things that we can do now. As we said in the film, the NHS, all those wonderful things that we have. We are all alive and able to enjoy all of these other wonderful inventions.
What's been shown tonight is how invented the British have been.
Absolutely.
Not only have we invented all the best sports, we've invented all the best engineering and the best... We're just a very creative nation.
Tablets.
I think
You're
we should
disappointed, though.
Yeah.
If you're going to lose to something, lose to the best. That's all I say. That's what.
A very good point.
Guys, can we have a round of applause, please, to our stunning celebrities?
it doesn't end here, because the Science Museum are hosting a very special evening later this summer and an exhibition on antibiotics later in November. And at that special evening, you can see all of the inventions, and of course our winner, antibiotics, will be celebrated in pride of place. Thousands of people will be there, as will I, and you can be there too. Just go to bbc.co.uk/invention to find out more. And to learn more about the inventions, follow the links to the Open University.
It's been a real privilege to spend time inside these stores and wonderful to discover so much about the objects that have changed our lives, sometimes without us even knowing it.
So thank you to our celebrities and to the studio audience. From the hangars here at Rawton, good night.
Good night.